Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. This is producer JL coming at you with the one, the only, Mr. Dave himself. Dave, how the heck are you?
I am good. I'm glad that fourth time is a charm on this. So thank you guys for being patient with us. Thursday was my fault. I had a work thing run late. Friday was Rob's fault. His kids were gremlins. And yesterday was JL's fault. He caught a 24-hour bug or whatever. So it's just me and JL. And yeah, better late than never, right?
That is correct. Better late than never. Yeah. We had a couple of hiccups going on because, life just kind of lifes, as Dave likes to say. But ultimately, we still get
I'm
a
sorry.
chance.
Well, I'm sorry. I have never said that at all ever in my life.
I do
I
not
have
believe
never
you.
once said life just lifes. I have never
Well,
once said that in my life.
well, I'm going to
And I
say
never
that you
will.
said it. Well, you just said it now, so there you go. But you see, that's
You
something
see,
that
this is what I
Dave
have
will
to deal with, people. This is what I have to deal with.
Well, with that being said, life happens. And like he said, better late than never. But we are here. We are recording this on Mother's Day. So, to the mothers who listen to this, happy Mother's Day. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the mothers in the world who take the time out to raise children and to take care of their families. And also, if you are a fan of the New York Knickerbockers, like I myself am, sorry, words are not working for me today. They totally dispatched the uh, Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia with a sweep. So there's some good news as well. If you're following baseball, baseball doesn't exist in Queens, at least. Anyways, all right. So that being said, Rangers news. So last week on the 5th was the NHL Draft Lottery. And that is the very eventful and partially contentious event where the worst teams in the league have their fate decided on where they're going to pick by a bunch of ping pong balls with Gary Bettman and Ernst and Young in the studio, along with a weirdly enthusiastic John Butchergross and a bunch of other stuff that's gone on. And with that being said, for some reason or another, which I am still flabbergasted by this, the Toronto Maple Leafs, with the 9.1% chance of getting the first overall pick, have won basically the Gavin McKenna Ivar Stenberg sweepstakes for the most part. And unfortunately for the New York Rangers, they dropped down to 5th. So they were projected to be at least between the 3rd and 4th range. They dropped down to 5th, even though they were technically the 4th worst team in the league. So I guess just right off the rip, Dave, and I'll give my thoughts after yours. What on earth happened?
The ping pong balls didn't fall. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not losing sleep over it. Neither should you. Nobody listening to this should be, oh my God, now everything is over. The Rangers are going to get a great prospect at 5th overall. And there is still a path for some of the guys that we were hoping to get to fall. So we got to just see how this plays out. There's a lot of fun scenarios that can play out at 5. And I, for one, enjoy chaos. So let's see.
Of course, Dave always tends to enjoy chaos because that's what he thrives on. It's like a vampire out for blood, except Dave's blood is chaos. So with that being said, I'm totally on a roll today, by the way. So I apologize
I don't
in
know.
advance.
I don't know if that's a role as much as it is. You're kind of just grasping at straws right now.
That that is true, but I'm going to say that I'm on a roll because that's what my therapist said, and I'm going to listen to him. Anyways, so
Fair enough.
so we like to have fun in the summer. We like to have fun all the time on this podcast. But anyways, so obviously it doesn't seem likely that the Rangers are going to get Stenberg or McKenna, which is a bit of a bummer. But like you said, there is some pretty good talent, at least in the top 5. It's more than likely that they're probably going to pick a defenseman, but I guess just going off of your estimation, who seems to be sort of the person that the Rangers could potentially pick? Because there seems to be a lot of options, whether it's a defenseman or even potentially a center.
So there are so many different ways this can go down. There is best player available, in which case McKenna goes to Toronto, Stenberg goes to San Jose, probably Malholtra goes to Vancouver, Reed to Chicago, or you could flip those if you want, really doesn't matter. And then the Rangers wind up with hopefully Carson Carrolls. Hopefully. But if people are going for position, things get interesting quickly. And JL, I don't know if I'm being insane, but I think there's a path for Stenberg to fall to the Rangers.
I was thinking about that. And honestly, it might not be totally impossible in that regard. Because the way that I think of it, and even McKenna might not be, he might not go number one. I mean, he's probably going to, more than likely, because Toronto is going to definitely pick best player available. But considering how John Chayka is essentially a fish oil salesman, it wouldn't surprise me if he decides to go controversial and pick somebody else, while McKenna probably ends up in like Chicago or Vancouver or San Jose or something like that. But the way that I had it in mind was that if Stenberg could potentially fall to the Rangers, that would mean that the top maybe 2 to 4 would have to either pick Malhotra and both Reed and Carrolls, and maybe even Verhoff. I've seen some mocks where Verhoff goes to Chicago, and
So
that
that's
Vancouver.
exactly what I'm saying. That's
Right.
exactly what I'm saying. Because San Jose could take Chase Reed.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen, truth be told.
And then Vancouver is just dumb. They're going to go, ooh, we need a top center to be the cornerstone of this franchise for the next 30 years. And they're going to go Malhotra. And then Chicago is between Verhoff, Carrolls, and Stenberg. And considering where their blue line is, I wouldn't be shocked if they go, we want Verhoff as that, stud number one defenseman, which means Stenberg falls to the Rangers.
I think that would. I think that's definitely a possibility, because if you look at the makeup of San Jose, they have enough firepower up front, especially with Celebrini. So it only makes sense for them to really pick Reed, truth be told. And then you look at Vancouver, like you said, it'd be a nice little story for them to, because if you notice online, Caleb Malhotra is really picking up a lot of steam online. Just all of a sudden, these posts of some of his highlights just start coming out. So it wouldn't surprise me if Vancouver were to go to the family sort of legacy pick by picking Caleb Malhotra. If obviously you didn't know, Manny Malhotra did play for Vancouver towards the end of his career. So I think that would definitely make for an interesting storyline, which ultimately at the end of the day, unless Chicago ends up deciding they want to add more firepower up front, they don't really have much back there with the exception of Alex Vlasic, and then everybody else seems to be kind of, middle of the road there. So it wouldn't surprise me, like you said, if they go for a Carrolls or even a Verhoff. But I do find it interesting, though, and you've said this before, that you say that at least for Chicago, Verhoff would be their number one defenseman. But then if Verhoff were to drop to the Rangers, I don't think you would be thrilled with that.
So I said that tongue in cheek because Verhoff is a guy that an old school GM is going to love. So Kyle Davidson has shown he's more of the old school mentality and not skill and everything else. And that's why I said it that way. I'm not sure. Obviously, you can't tell I'm doing this, but when I said, and they get that number one stud defenseman, my hands were kind of just like waving. And like I wasn't being sarcastic because listen, Verhoff is going to be very good. I just don't. It's a red flag for me again that most of the scouting reports lead with intangibles and not skill. That's a problem to me. And it's a giant red flag to me. If he's that good and that skilled, you lead with the skill and then you say, oh, by the way, he's also, a great leader, great fortune, whatever. But you start with the skill and what they can do on the ice. So, listen, would I be happy if the Rangers took Verhoff? If Carrolls is out there, probably not. But I'm not going to say he's going to be a bad pick or a bad prospect. I personally just would take Carroll's over him. I'd probably take Smith's over him in terms of just defensemen at this point. And honestly, I'd probably take Daxon Rudolph over him. But again, that's just me. Everybody, that's the best part about draft prospects. None of us know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
that's just my
yeah.
opinion, and just reading scouting reports and just occupational hazard, reading between the lines of all of that. And when everything starts with intangibles and how great of a guy he is, I'm sure he's a great guy. But the Rangers need skill, and they need speed, and they need skating. And Verhov doesn't have speed. He's a fine enough skater, but he doesn't have the speed that the Rangers need. We're at that point. The Rangers need individual speed.
Yeah, that was definitely evident with some of the defensemen on the back end, especially with a guy like Braden Schneider back there. I'm not including Will Borgen in that because Will Borgen was hurt, so he had
Borgen is a
suffered
good skater, though.
No,
Borgen's
Borgen is an incredibly above average skater. It was definitely
Yeah.
an improvement over Jacob Trouba. So I'm not worried about him. I'm more worried about the Braden Schneider, Matthew Robertson's, which I'm anticipating that Schneider ends up getting dealt because of, they could probably end up getting some draft capital. And actually, just to kind of touch on a possible trade real quick, apparently there was a report or there was some sort of musings going on that San Jose might be interested in moving the second overall pick, because they probably want to get extra draft capital and probably fill out the team in a different way because they probably think they could get a defenseman or probably use that capital to get a defenseman and then fill the team the other way in that sense. So I'm guessing, would you think that the Rangers would probably try to make a swing at San Jose with the Mike Greer connection? I think that'd be pretty interesting. And I think that would definitely add to a lot of the chaos that you so desire.
I do love me some solid chaos, and there is definitely a way. So I actually wrote about the San Jose trade up thing. There's like 4 options we can do, and one of them is just pure chaos, and you're going to hate me for it. So the one that everybody's talking about is the 5th and Braden Schneider for the 2nd, and probably like a sweetener or some sort, maybe Vegas's 4th round pick or some shit like that. That's the one everybody's on. Then there's packaging the 5th, the Dallas's pick roughly the 27th, and one of their 37 third round picks for the 2nd overall. That way, San Jose gets more draft capital, like you were talking about. There's the 3rd, which doesn't really make much sense to me. They're not trading William Eklund, but packaging the 5th, Schneider, Brett Berard, and the 2027 first for the 2nd and William Eklund. And the 4th, Fox and Brett Berard for Eklund in the 2nd overall pick.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
yeah.
None of those are happening. The only one that has a shot at happening is the first one, which is Schneider in the 5th for the 2nd and a sweetener. And if San Jose's case, they get Schneider, and then they get the 5th overall, they probably wind up with Carroll's, and that's a big jumpstart to their blue line.
So do you think that so I guess now it begs the question now that the Rangers have they soured on Schneider? And do you think that San Jose would value Schneider enough to want to make a deal like that?
I can't.
Look, I mean, he's not the world's worst defenseman, but
he's not the worst defenseman, but he's not
like
progressing
here. Yeah,
he's not progressing, and I'm sorry, if you can't outplay Will Borgen, and you're up for a new contract, and you're up for a Borgen-like contract, and you have, at the very least, significant perceived trade value across the NHL, you have to move him. Is it my preference? No. But trade value right now will never be higher for a guy that just hasn't shown it in his professional career. He hasn't taken that next step. He hasn't progressed. And it's at the point where if I have to pick Borgen or Schneider on this team, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. I'd pick Borgen because Borgen is objectively better right now. You
Yes.
can't look at the way that they're playing and say that Schneider's been better.
No, you're absolutely right. No, I definitely do agree with that, and it's kind of sad because there was so much hype about Braden Schneider when he was drafted. And look, he hasn't been objectively terrible. He's definitely had good moments, but a lot of that really came from him being like a third pair defenseman. He was really good as a rookie in the 22 playoffs because not only was he shielded, but he was also playing with Justin Braun for the most part. And even through that regular season, sometimes he would get paired with, Patrick Nemeth, goodness gracious. And he actually did reasonably well with that pair to a degree. But for the most part, he was kind of shielded, and being a rookie, you kind of said, okay, well, this is what you're going to get for the time being. But like you said, there was really no progression because, with Trouba getting shipped away and, the rest of the defense kind of just beginning to lean on him, you kind of hoped that Schneider would become, there were times where he would be nicknamed Mini Trouba because he would go out and get this, similar type of hits that Trouba would go for. But it just doesn't seem like that really materialized. And although I will say that there were some instances where he did play well with a puck mover with Zach Jones at some point, but there were a lot of times, and I don't know whether this has contributed to his injury that he had, or maybe he's just not a fit for Sullivan's system anymore. But even towards the end with Laviolette during that last season, and pretty much most of last season with Mike Sullivan at the helm, it just didn't seem like he was really fitting into the system. And that's odd to say because he always seemed like a defensive first guy. And when Fox was out, and him and Gavrikov were playing, they had what, 2 or 3 good games, and then everything just kind of cratered after that, which is weird because you would pair Gavrikov with someone else outside of Fox and they did reasonably well. So it is definitely kind of a bummer, and it is definitely concerning. I would hope that Mike Greer would take that trade for the 2, for the 5, that would include Schneider, and then maybe another sweetener towards the end. But I highly doubt it'll happen because it seems like they would probably go after Chase Freed. But it definitely does make a lot of sense to kind of go after a proven commodity and then maybe try to go and maybe get another solid puck mover that can be picked at the lower part of the draft, and then you establish another part of your defense that way. You also have to remember too, Mike Greer was also with the New York Rangers for I think 3 seasons as sort of a special advisor or assistant to the GM when Chris Drury was here. So they definitely do have a good rapport, especially with the whole Barclay Goodrow stuff. So I definitely can see that happening. It's just interesting. You just never really know, and especially with prospects, it's kind of hard to tell. And before we go on to the questions, I was just going to say that you talk about prospects. I remember when Nils Lundqvist was beginning to be a thing here, I thought that he was going to be this sort of like Adam Fox light. You watched his highlights in the SHL, and this dude was just a barn burner. I think he broke Erik Karlsson's record for points in the SHL, if I'm trying to remember that correctly. And it just seemed like he was going to be a solid offensive defenseman in the NHL. Plays a couple of games for the Rangers, didn't really work out, and now he's essentially a pylon in Dallas. It's the same thing with Libor Hayek, too. I thought Libor Hayek was going to be a good defenseman. And for some time, he actually kind of was somewhat decent, but then the roof just kind of caved in, and he sort of, cratered, which was unfortunate because I was at his first NHL game and he scored the goal, and I thought that dude's going to be legit, but I digress. But anyways, so yeah, there's my little thing on that. I am interested to see what happens. It is kind of a bummer though that we're having to talk about this instead of talking about the latest Ranger playoff game, but fingers crossed, hoping within the next year or so that whatever Chris Drury ends up doing actually ends up working out, and then we can actually talk about playoff games, and I could probably spend ridiculous amounts of money heading to the Garden, as people have done with the Knicks right now. Anyways, all right, so, I mean, that's pretty much it in regards to that. I don't think there's really much else for us to broach on. We'll have to wait for the draft. The Rangers don't seem to be the type of team that would want to cause chaos, but I think this is sort of the year where they might have
They're
to
not.
start doing so. They won't, but they should, because I think that would probably add a jolt to the team in terms of roster construction. But then again, Chris Drury is about as interesting as paint drying, and he likes to hide behind his Zoom calls without his camera on. But anyways, that's another story for another day.
Oh,
Anyways, yeah, I've never seen a GM be so visibly. The only other time I've ever seen management on a team be this, hidden are the Wilpons. And let's just say that's not a great sign for me to say that. And if you know anything about me and the Wilpons and the Mets and my ultimate, incredible, I don't want to say hatred because I don't hate anybody, but my incredibly strong dislike for them, they would pull that tactic a lot and have very, controlled media and press conferences and all that. But that's another podcast for another day. All right, so now we're going to head to the questions here. Thank you again. Again, we apologize for, the delay, but we are here and we are going to get to your questions and answer them to the best of our abilities. So with that being said, we are going to dive into the post, and here are the questions. So the first question comes from Ranger Fan 62, and Ranger Fan 62 asks, after watching these playoffs, how can anyone in the Rangers organization think that this team is truly close to competing in the playoffs?
Drugs.
Or delusion, maybe.
I go drugs.
Well, yeah.
No.
So it seems that Dave has muted his mic on purpose. And let's see if we can get him to fix that. Okay, I guess Dave is back. I guess he didn't mute his mic. I guess we had a small technical issue there. But yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Anyway, what I was saying before our lovely platform muted me for no reason, can't blame it though. Other than drugs, if you think about it, the Rangers have the best goalie in the NHL, Igor Shesterkin. They have a top 3 defenseman in Adam Fox. They have Gavrikov, who is probably the best purely defensive defenseman in the NHL, though he did set offensive records like defensemen tend to do whenever they come to the Rangers. And they have, at the very least, a decent enough bottom 6. So they could be thinking, okay, we just need what? The Mika Zibanejad line to be our second line, and we need to figure out what's going on with JT Miller and surround him with talent. Easier said than done.
But it can be done.
It can be done. They have, but the thing is, like, it can be done, but they have to be creative. And are they going to be creative?
I think we've discussed this. I think with the last podcast or the podcast prior, we definitely did. I guess we did discuss this more in terms of the optimism aspect of everything, which I mean it is there, I do think that this team can make the playoffs next season. Whether or not they'll go far is a different story. But you look at the Eastern Conference right now, and Carolina is steamrolling their part of the playoffs right now. They steamrolled the Flyers, they steamrolled Ottawa, and those are teams that didn't finish that much higher than the Rangers to a degree, or at least talent-wise. The team, they're really not that far off. They might have 1 or 2 extra players that, could probably put the puck in the back of the net, which is ideal, of course. But all in all, at the end of the day, you could probably get the Rangers out from the summer and have them play a game against any one of those teams. And they're probably going to win a few, especially with the way that they ended the season. So, the Rangers, I mean, they're delusional as is, but that's just me coming from as a fan that, they think that they're going to win a cup, which is, kind of the prevailing attitude. But honestly, they're really not that far off from a playoff spot. And I do think I have this very weird inkling that Chris Drury is on sort of this hot seat that we don't really know about. Look at all the success that the Knicks are having right now with, what Leon Rose and Jalen Brunson and the rest of the crew is doing over there on the other side of the garden. And you have to think that, there has to be some sort of directive, or I don't want to say ultimatum, but there has to be some sort of directive where Dolan wants to have another repeat of where the Knicks and the Rangers are both doing well in the spring going into the summer. So I think that there's going to be some bit of a push by Drury to try and bring some players in. Whether or not he believes the team is going to, they can make the playoffs or whatever, well, he just has to do the work. But they think very highly of themselves. So, you want to take that confidence and actually put together a winning team? Listen, be my guest, because you're just making everything easier for everybody. If you decide to either do it or stumble onto that, I'm more than happy to take it, because at this point you take what you can get. All right. Next question comes from NYR for life. If the Rangers have to sign one of Brodzinski or Sheary, which one? I like the reply on. Yeah, I like the reply on this question. It says none, or it is a stupid move. It's going to be Sheary. I wish it would be both. I think Brodzinski is well liked in the locker room, but then again, so is Connor Sheary. But with the emergence of Hamelash, Sikora, you still have Edstrom hanging around. You still have Rempe hanging around. Space is sparse. And I think that Brodzinski is going to probably end up getting a decent contract with a team to be a fourth-line center. And you know what? God bless him for that. He earned it. He put in his time with the Rangers after being cut by the Kings. Turned out to be a pretty productive player for the most part. The only sucky part about losing Brodzinski is the fact that he's fast. And I think that's something the Rangers would need. But at the same time, you could probably get that from another player in the organization.
Yeah, like the way the fourth line is shaking out, I think Edstrom is moved at some point soon. Not soon, but I think he's moved. They're going to have, what? Sikora, Hemlosh, Rempe, Edstrom, Brodzinski, Sheary, all these guys for fourth line roles. Berard, if he's still with the organization. And there's just too many bodies. And I'm sure I left somebody out too. Radish is another guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's another guy they need to get rid of. So, if it's me, I'm trading Radish for whatever I can get. If Adam Edstrom has value, I'm packaging him with Trocheck or Schneider to get something significant. And then you're left with a fourth line that consists of Rempe, Hemlosh, Sikora. Those are all three those are three wingers. Sheary's a winger. Brodzinski is, let's be real, he's a winger. They need a fourth line center. So they have to add somebody to this fourth line. And that means another winger's got to go. So honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if neither one of them, but it's going to be Sheary. Let's say Edstrom is gone. Let's say Radish is gone. And I think Berard will be gone too.
Well, I guess the question is now is that who's going to be the one to fill that fourth line center role? Who knows it?
Stenlund, Kevin Stenlund.
Kevin Stenlund. That's the first time I've heard that name in this context.
Honestly, I have no idea where I say things anymore. That could have been a Blue Seats After Dark thing. That could have been a post thing. My brain is scrambled eggs right now, so smooth scrambled eggs. So I don't really know what I say anymore.
But do you think is he a free agent, Stenlund?
Yeah, he was on the. I wouldn't have said that if he wasn't.
Well, because he was on Utah, I know that, but
Stenlund.
But I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing though I'm guessing there has to be a reason why you said that name, because he is 6'4", so that definitely helps. And I totally forgot he won a cup with the Panthers. That might not actually be a bad move then. Actually, now that
I liked what I saw when he was with the Panthers against the Rangers.
Yeah,
I liked what he was doing, and when they went out and signed Sam Carrick, I was like, I preferred Stenlund. Sam Carrick turned out to be great for the Rangers, but I preferred Stenlund at that time too. I like him.
That wouldn't be a bad move. But that's if the Rangers, or at least Chris Drury, decides not to, hate Europeans, which I know that's a bit blown out of proportion. I do like when people say that because it does make me laugh. Because it is kind of funny. Oh, he doesn't like Europeans or Russians, but yet gave a Russian probably one of the biggest contracts of his life. So, that doesn't really hold a candle to me, especially if the guy is good. But anyways, okay, this next question I'm gonna.
According to cap wages, Kevin Stenlund is 0 years old.
He's a fetus. Got it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize 0 years old and 29 years old were the same thing, but I guess that means I'm 3. So if that by that logic. All right. So this next one, this one's a bit wordy, but you might have to help me out
Trim
with
it down
a little bit. Well, no, it's not that bad. It's just there's a lot behind it. So NFTRH asks, why do Bruins fans try to one up Rangers fans in the GM hatred Olympics? From the days where Harry Sinden took Emile Francis out to the woodshed, took his lunch money, and stole Rattel, Park, and Middleton from him for a grand total of one whining crybaby. He doesn't count Hodge or Vadnais as even worth mentioning. The Bruins front office, with some variability along the way, has always been better. I asked because my buddy and I are going to sit and debate this very subject. When I mentioned above, he put a post 2015 qualifier on it. Now we're going deep history, and he'll change his tune.
So the question is, why do Bruins fans try to one-up Rangers fans? Because Boston sports fans think they are the most tortured fan base in the world. Meanwhile, all they've done since 2004 is win fucking championships in every goddamn sports league. You guys are the most entitled fucking sports fans in existence. You still play the victim card. You've won 50 goddamn championships since 2004. Shut the fuck up. Let other people win.
Yeah. I think I think it's just I think that's just kind of with the way the city is and the way the fans are, it's that they like being they have this sort of like they like being the inferior person, because for so many years they were just absolute dog water. Like they were just absolutely terrible. The Bruins win the cup in 2011. The Patriots win like freaking 5-6 Super Bowls with Tom Brady and those cheaters. The Celtics win a couple of titles. The Red Sox won, I think, 3 titles, 2004, 2007, 2013, or no, 2018 rather. And so, but at the end of the day, though, when it comes to just Boston in general, they like being the little brother to New York. And maybe there's somebody who is from Boston that probably would refute that, but really their attitudes don't really kind of justify that. Oh yeah, little title town. Oh yeah, Boston, gonna go park the car in Harvard Yard, all that nonsense.
They don't actually say that, by the way. I dated a girl from the area.
No, I
They
know.
don't actually say that.
But look, if they're gonna be crybabies, I might as well perpetuate a small stereotype in regards to how they talk. So I mean, why not? But yeah, no, they're just a bunch of crybabies, and they think that they're this, the curse of the Bambino is gone. The Bruins have shown that they can win titles. The Celtics shown they win titles. The Patriots, for goodness sake. You think you're cursed? Root for the New York Jets. Then you'll see what cursed is. Okay. Just like the Buffalo Sabres, the last time the Jets made the playoffs, I was in high school. Okay. And just imagine having to grow up and become an adult while watching my football team make every national headline known to man that was probably more embarrassing than pooping your pants in the middle of a theme park. Okay. And you probably have
or
some
falling
sort of
asleep
dignity.
in the middle of a State of the Union.
Yeah, that too. Thank you very much. At least if you were to poop your pants in the middle of a theme park, you can say, oh, well, maybe, I didn't have anywhere to go. But, oh, sorry, I ran into my offensive lineman's butt and I fumbled the ball. That's always
I was at
brought
that
up to
game.
me. Damn you, Dave. Were you really?
I was at that game with said girl from Boston.
Oh, my gosh. Jeez. I think we're just going to have to take you out to the woodshed and shoot you for that.
Oh, yeah, boy. I haven't been to a Jet game since, and I don't plan on going back.
No, MetLife is a pit anyways. I went to a few 2 years ago when they were on prime time, and it was just it's not a fun place to be. But anyways, so yeah, the Bruins fans, it's the Boston mentality. So anyways.
So hold on, I'm just thinking about this. Since 2000, the Pats have, what, 6 Super Bowls?
Just about.
6. Bruins have 1 cup. The Celtics have 2 or 3 championships, and the Red Sox have 3. So 3, 2, 1 is 6. They have 12 championships in 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
You fucking crybaby victim bullshit. Shut the fuck up.
And yeah, pretty much. Okay, so this next question comes from AF694. And they ask, if you could focus on one area to fix and improve this offseason, would it be adding a top 6 forward or building a solid second pair on D?
Ooh. So I'm gonna have to go with top 6 forward because the Rangers don't have any in the system. A second pair D. I mean, you got Fortescue, you got Emery coming up, you got a
Scott
good
Morrow.
amount of Morrow, you got Dorrington, you got guys that could potentially fill that role. The best forward prospect, not named Gabe Perreault right now, is what, Malcolm Spence? And he's a good
Yes.
listen, he's a good prospect. But best case scenario is he's a top 6 forward. He's most likely second, third liner. Like on a competing team, he's a third. On a cup team, he's a third liner. On a lot of other teams, he's a second liner kind of kid. And I like him. I think he's going to be a solid winger for the Rangers, but they need more. They need
Yeah.
talent.
I think the somebody who could complement a guy like a Malcolm Spence would be somebody who is really skilled. I think Malcolm Spence does have that skill, but I think he also can, he has a little bit of an edge to his game, at least from what I've seen. Also, let's not forget about Liam Greentree, by the way.
I forgot about Greentree. Thank you.
But apparently this dude, just from what he's done in the Memorial Cup, or at least I think they're in the Memorial Cup, Windsor, but just overall how he's played over the last couple of months, it seems as if he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder. But that's just kind of the way he is. And I think that if you can find yourself this sort of skilled center, or find
He's
a
a
way
winger.
to I know, but I'm saying you can
Okay. You meant found a skilled center to play with him. Okay.
to play
Again,
with
my
him.
brain doesn't brain. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. My brain hasn't brained for a bit, so I understand completely. But if you can find someone that could complement, I mean, because look, I'll say this about Greentree, just from what I've seen, it seems as if he's becoming more, I don't want to say mature, but it kind of seems like he's kind of rounding his game out a little more, and he's just kind of being a bit of a force. Whether or not that ends up translating over to the NHL right away remains to be seen. But you like to see a guy who's a bit of a bull in a china shop, which is kind of what we've seen. I think he's got a couple of hat tricks in a couple of games so far. So I mean, that's a pretty good sign. So you put him with a Malcolm Spence kind of guy, you can shoot. I mean, I'm not going to say that, JT Miller would still be as effective as he is now in like a year or two. But I mean, if Spence progresses pretty well and Greentree actually ends up, coming here sooner than later, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to slap them in, right next to JT Miller on his wings, you know? And, oh, you also have to remember when it comes to bottom 6 forwards, the Rangers also have Ty Cartier too. Like you said, we did forget some people, which is kind of adds to the question before about Bradzinski and Sheary. I think Cartier definitely played his way onto the team 100%.
Oh yeah,
But
Cartier should be staying. I
yeah,
have that third line, hopefully third line of Cooley, Laba, Cartier. It's just an absolute force.
oh, that
That'll
would
be a
be that
fun line.
so good.
But I think they
So
view Cooley as a second line forward, which I don't agree with.
you know what?
But then that
I
leaves
see it.
Adam Sikora for the third line, so I'm not losing sleep over that.
I see it. He did play really well towards the end of the season. There was
He
an
did.
interview that came. There was an interview that came out. I think it was either with Cooley, and then they also talked to Sullivan. And basically, I think this was on the Athletic, if I remember correctly. I think Vince Mercogliano put this out. One of those guys. But and I apologize if I'm misquoting this or miscrediting it. But basically, the gist of it was that Cooley is looking to try and increase his scoring output, and they basically just told him, "Hey, dude, stand in the front of the net, get into the gritty corners in front, and then more pucks will go in." And then he did have a bit of a resurgence in terms of pucks going into the back of the net because of where he placed himself. And Sullivan kind of echoed that sentiment as well, where they wanted Cooley to kind of get in the dirty areas a little bit and kind of force his way in. And it ended up actually working out pretty well for him. And the guy got a hat trick against the Capitals when the Rangers just absolutely, smacked the crap out of him on that back-to-back homestand where they had Detroit, where Perreault got the hat trick, where I was there for. And then they had the Sunday game where they had Cooley get his hat trick as well, which I think that was also the Disney game too. So I forget what character Cooley was, but it was actually kind of funny.
I
So
love those
they're
Disney games. I love those things. They're so well done.
no, those are fun. I'll never forget when they first did it and Patrick Kane scored a goal. I was actually at the Garden when that happened, but I was following it on my phone to see, and I'm looking at, Patrick Kane coming up to the dot and shooting it at the low slot, which I thought was hilarious. But it was cool seeing him as kind of this like weird sort of cartoon character animated. And obviously they've advanced the technology, which actually makes it fun to watch, even if you're an adult. But I think if we had to focus, like I'll agree with you on that, focusing on one area, it would be the top six, because I think what that would do is that would kind of stabilize a lot of what went wrong, because the team played really good defense. But outside of Artemi Panarin at one point, the team wasn't scoring at all. Like Lafreniere wasn't scoring. And ironically enough, Panarin leaving was addition by subtraction. So, you want to kind of supplement that a little bit so that, Mika, Gabe, and Lafreniere are not out here just trying to be a one-man show, because if anyone's watched Rangers hockey, you know very well that doesn't bode well for them, especially when you had Marian Gaborik and Vinny Prospal essentially be the only guys who could score at one point. But anyways, all right, so this next question comes from Power Kill Rangers, and Power Kill Rangers asks, what do you think the percentage is that one of Reed, Stenberg, or Malhotra dropped to number 5?
One of them?
Yes.
I'd say 5%.
Okay, that's fair.
So I see that. I can see. We already went through the Stenberg one. So Stenberg, that's like a 2% chance of happening. I don't think Malhotra drops no matter what, because somebody's going to take the center. And then I don't think Reed really drops either. So honestly, it's really just if teams draft for position, I can see Stenberg falling. I don't see Reed falling. I don't see Malhotra falling.
So Stenberg is probably the one you think is going to be the one that does it.
Which makes no sense, because he's the clear-cut second overall pick to me.
But he also seems to be the more NHL ready player, if anything.
So out of those three, the only one who's not is Malhotra. He still needs a little bit of time. But people are saying Reed is ready.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're that good of a skating defenseman, I mean, you could slot right in a la Matthew Schaefer. But then again, you know. So, yeah, I don't disagree. So, okay, this next question comes from Barry R. Green, and Barry asks, do you think Scott Morrow will become an NHL defenseman, or do you think it's time to trade him and get something for him?
I think they have to give him a shot. At this point, he doesn't have much value. So you're better off trading Schneider, and unless you land Reed, which isn't happening, you trade Schneider, you create a spot for him, and basically you say, you got a month and a half to figure your shit out, or else we're going to go and put in Vincent Iorio, who is not a good defenseman. I don't know why people are obsessed with this kid. I hope he gets better and it winds up being fine, but he just did not look good in his time with the Rangers. There's a reason why he was waived 3 times in one season. But like, back to the original question, you have to actually play Morrow and give him a legitimate shot. When they called up Sikora, there wasn't really much he was doing in the AHL that said, hey, call me up, and then look at how he played. So the argument of Morrow's not doing anything in the AHL to warrant a call-up doesn't hold any water right now, because Sikora wasn't looking good. Garand wasn't looking good. Hemlosh was fine, but he wasn't like, call me up right away. He wasn't forcing the issue. So just play him and see what happens. What the fuck do you have to lose anymore? Like, this team can't get worse. Shut up, JL.
Well, no, I mean, technically speaking, they can, but I see what you're saying. I'm not going to give you crap on that one, because I don't disagree with you on that. But I think, though, I think what people have to remember about Morrow is, first of all, there's the whole sunk cost thing about, trading away the guy, you got for Keandre Miller. But there's a reason why they got Scott Morrow specifically. Obviously, Morrow didn't exactly fit with what Carolina was looking to do, and apparently Keandre Miller, even though he's not putting up as much points, is apparently doing reasonably well. And you know what? That's fine because he fits their system. He didn't fit what the Rangers are trying to do here, and he wasn't going to do well here at some point unless there was a big drastic change. So I think when it comes to that, we have to understand that concept. Secondly, there was a bit of a period of time when Fox was hurt and Morrow was getting a lot of playing time. I think also when Borgen was out too, where Morrow was really playing well out there, where, granted, you didn't notice him much, but you could tell that he was a good skater who could hold on to the puck. And as he kept playing, he got more confident. And right before they sent him down, he was playing well, but obviously when you have the logjam of Borgen and Schneider, who apparently these guys can't play off their offside for some reason, it kind of just kind of seemed as a bit of a logjam. And you're not going to scratch him because that goes into the argument of you need to play the guy in the spot where he can succeed. You could scratch Vincent Iorio. You can scratch Urho Vakanainen, which that's another name that we have, that they're probably.
Yeah, that is one we forgot.
So, you can scratch those guys because it's inconsequential to whatever development that they have because you know what you're getting with those guys, And I will mention, when I was at the Rangers Devils game where Jack Hughes got the hat trick, Iorio played in that game, and I just remember reading in the chat in our group chat before, the game started about Iorio just not being a good defenseman. And I thought, well, he doesn't look as lost. But then as the game progressed, I kind of watched him play and I said, yeah, this dude's kind of not the best, So, definitely confirmed what Rob was saying. And I just kind of started to notice it a bunch after the season, after that game and as the season went along. But I think Scott Morrow will be an NHL defenseman. I think ideally he becomes that second pair puck moving defenseman that fills the gap that they've been needing. And then if you put him with a guy like a Will Borgen, who can defend reasonably well in his own right.
I mean, they're on the same side at that point, so you'd have to go, Robertson or Fortescue?
Morrow and Fortescue, I think, would make a really good second pair or third pair D because they can move the puck. I think Fortescue looked fantastic in his brief period here. I think, Robertson definitely, became a bit better in terms of, his style. Robertson's been a very pleasant surprise, and I'm glad that he finally ended up working out because his big body really can make a difference if utilized properly. So I think
he's a good skater. He's a very smooth skater.
He's a phenomenal skater, like a lot better than I gave him credit for.
That was always his calling card, was his skating, and he's not a burner, but he's a solid skater.
So I went to Dallas for the Rangers Stars game towards the end of the season. And I had the opportunity, for some reason you can't do this at MSG anymore, which I'm a little annoyed by, but I had the opportunity to go down onto the ice or, the lower bowl for warmups. And I positioned myself in front of.
Hold on. You can't do that at MSG anymore?
Yeah, I don't think they let you do it. They didn't let me do it after COVID. I went down when after the COVID season, I went down to go just to stand around in warmups, and I got stopped by security. I did it like 4 times during that span, and they didn't let me do it. Maybe it's changed. Maybe they've loosened things back up a little bit. But ever since then, I used to be able to just go in, stand down there, watch warmups, and then go back to my seat. They let me do it, but then they would stop me. So I had the pleasure of going down towards the lower bowl at the American Airlines Center, which, by the way, is a phenomenal arena to go see a hockey game, by the way. I mean, that's probably one of the best arenas I've been to. And so I was in front of the area where the Rangers were, and I'm looking at Matthew Robertson, and I know that he was a decent skater, but I saw the way he was moving around, and I'm saying, wow, he's a lot better than I actually thought. The way that he was moving around, he was on his edges really well. He was really quick. And I thought, wow, I was pleasantly surprised. And then I kind of looked back at how he played this season, I said, you know what, it kind of makes sense because his quick moving, style, at least his, the way that he handles his edges and his movements works really well in a Mike Sullivan system. So, but yeah, I think Morrow's going to be a good defenseman. I like the way he moves. He's definitely a good skater, and I think that he will probably, probably get more time next season, depending on what they do this offseason. So, anyways, so this next question comes. Yeah.
One thing on Morrow, and it's not so much Morrow as much as it is this mindset of offensive defenseman, one-dimensional offensive defenseman, and people think Morrow can't play defense. And listen, he has room to grow. I'm not saying he's Adam Fox out there, but I find it funny how one-dimensional defensemen that are offense get so much slack over one-dimensional guys that are defensive.
Kill McCarr.
And it's just interesting to me because in the NHL, the new NHL, you have to be able to move the puck. Otherwise, guess what? You're Dan Girardi, you're Vincent Iorio, you're Mark Stahl, you're help me out. Name any or Hovakanainen. No, he can move the puck actually. Vakanainen can move the puck somewhat well. He's just legitimately not good at anything else. It's just funny to me that there's this notion that you can't be just a puck mover and just hold your own in the defensive zone. You have to be this elite defensive guy. And then, hey, if you move the puck, great. That's such a 90s mentality. And the 90s were 30 years ago. It's just that, first off, that hurt me to say.
Yeah, that hurt me too.
God, that hurt. I actually lost my point because that hurt. It's just odd that we're still having this discussion in 2026. I understand having this discussion like 2015, but it's 2026. We've seen how bad the Rangers have been at moving the puck out of the zone when Adam Fox isn't on the ice. We finally got somebody else that can do it somewhat well in Matthew Robertson. And people are just losing their minds over, we don't need any more. We need defense. No, you need to be able to move the puck up the fucking ice because they're NHL defensemen. They can defend on their own. The reason why these guys get caught so much is because they can't get the puck out of the fucking zone. They can't execute a single fucking breakout ever. And that's why the Rangers look so bad on defense, is because these guys they have grenades on their sticks as soon as they get them. And yes, this does include Will Borgen, who is a great skater. I love the way he skates, but he does need a little bit of work on being able to make that first pass out of the zone.
Which is why I think a guy like a Morrow would be able to fit well with him because he can move it up.
Handedness.
Morrow, what's that?
Handedness. They're both
that's
righties.
right. Handedness. Right. That's if Borgen would, or at least Morrow could play on his offside.
But, I think Morrow could. I think it would be great for him to do that. Certainly would open up his skill set.
Well, especially with the fact that, more than likely he could play on the left side and, he can do the whole NHL 26 thing and, get ready for the one-timer. But, no, you do make a good point because I think the model that the Rangers are trying to emulate are the model of the Florida Panthers. And they have a lot of guys on the team where they're probably not pretty. That team knows how to clear the puck out of the zone. And one of the things that the Panthers were very adept at doing was finding a way to get the puck up and over out to the neutral part of the ice where the forwards can end up coming in and make a good play where it leads to a breakout or at least an odd man rush or whatever. That was the big thing that the Rangers were having issue with. When you had guys like an Eric Gustafsson and a Jacob Trouba who couldn't seem to handle that and would get pinned in their own zone very easily, the Panthers took advantage of that. You talk about really not being able to make the first pass. I mean, we watched it for so many years with Jacob Trouba once he started getting hurt. Like the first, 2.5, maybe, 2.5 seasons of True Buzz, a Ranger were fine because he wasn't, a total net negative back there. But he got older. His wrist was acting up, his ankle acted up, his knee started acting up, and he just wasn't the same anymore, which is why they ushered him out. And we can argue again on how they did it. Probably wasn't the most diplomatic, but that's another conversation for another day that we've had a million times. But the point is, though, is that I think the Rangers now are beginning to really realize that they have to get guys who can get the puck out of the zone. Will Borgen can do it because he had reasonably decent numbers with Seattle that showed that he can do that. It just means that he can improve on that. So, it's just I think with guys like Morrow, Fortescue, and a couple of other guys that they have in the system could potentially do that. It just all depends on whether it materializes right away or not. So, okay, so these next questions comes from the producer JL Praise account, and we'll just answer them one by one. Of course, again, best name on the website. Of course, it's not me. So the first one is, with most of the finalists for the various end of season NHL awards being announced, do you have any predictions or thoughts? Oh,
if Jonathan Taves wins the Masterton, I don't know what I'm going to do. He should not win the Masterton.
No, I agree. I haven't really looked at the finalists for the awards yet.
Me neither, but that was the one I noted.
Yeah, I think once award season comes around, I think we'll have a better idea. I think is Hedman up for the Norris again? I think maybe.
I have no idea. I got to be honest with you. I kind of wish I saw this before. Okay, let's pull up NHL award
finalists. Yeah, I never really. I usually don't pay attention to the awards unless there's like a Ranger that's nominated. I think there's one Ranger nominated for an award. I just don't remember. I should have.
I got it open. All right. Hart Trophy: Kucherov, McKinnon, McDavid.
That's going to go to.
It should go to Kucherov.
It's probably going to go to McKinnon if they stay in the playoffs.
This is a non-playoff award.
I know, but they tend to favor.
Aren't all the votes in already?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right.
I think all the votes are in at this point, and these are just the top 3 vote getters.
Well,
Kucherov is the only reason why Tampa made the playoffs.
Well, I'd say McKinnon because of how good the team was this year, and he's just
that's true.
Right?
It'll be those two. I don't think McDavid wins.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Is Hedman up for a Norris or for the Norris? Which
no, Dahlin, Makar, Werenski.
So unless they decided that Makar is going to get it again because of he's associated with McKinnon, I think it honestly goes to Dahlin.
It'll go to Dahlin. Werenski didn't make the playoffs, so it'll go to him.
Yeah,
it'll go to Dahlin. All right, Selke, Cirelli, Nelson, Suzuki. I mean, I don't know how these guys vote on this anymore.
It's probably going to be Anthony Cirelli.
He's very good.
He is very good. I would take Anthony Cirelli on the Rangers any day, truth be told, but
All right, Calder, Demidov, Schaefer, Seneke. It'll be Schaefer.
It'll be Schaefer. That's that definitely. He broke the rookie record for defensemen in points and I think in goals for the Islanders. So, and he was just kind of this trailblazer. So yeah, he's definitely. Demidov would have probably been the guy if it weren't for Schaefer. It was You said Demidov, Schaefer,
Seneke.
Yeah, Beckett, Seneca. Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah. I think that they just needed another name. Not that Bennett Seneca is not terrible by any means. He's actually a really good defenseman. He's actually been him and Jackson.
He's not a defenseman.
Oh no, that's right. I'm mixing him and Jackson Lacombe together. No, Beckett Seneca has been really good for the Ducks, and he's actually been one of the kind of sort of firecrackers that they've had on that team on Anaheim that kind of led them to the playoffs. For some reason, he wears number 45, if I'm correct. So sometimes I see him on the ice and I think he's a defenseman. Then I have to remember he's a forward. So, but him and Jackson Lacombe is the one I'm thinking of, which I'm kind of shocked that he's not up there for that. But, then again.
Lacombe wasn't a rookie. He was with the team last year.
I know, but I know I was going to get to that. It's just I was going to say that my reference.
Dude,
window,
are you okay?
No,
Like, did you have a stroke?
My reference window, the last 2 seasons have kind of melded together. So I would think that this is one thing, but then it's really not. So,
All right, we're gonna move on because before your
Okay.
brain completely melts. All right, Masterton, Darlene Landeskog Taves for the Masterton. That's got to go to Landeskog, right?
That's gonna go to Landeskog. Has to.
All right, Cooper, Muse, or Ruff for the Jack Adams. This is gonna go to Muse, and Ranger fans are gonna fucking riot.
No, I think it's gonna be Lindy Ruff.
It'll be either way. It'll be raw. I just want it to be Muse because I want people to riot. You know me.
Oh, because because of the whole Rangers connection, yeah.
Yeah, basically. And they chose Sully over Muse, basically.
Yeah.
All right, Lady Bing, Caulfield, Kopitar, Sanderson. That'll go to Kopitar. Final season.
Yeah, they'll give him his swan song. Yeah, it's going to Kopitar.
All right, Vezina, Sorokin, Swayman, Vasilevsky.
Ooh, that's underwhelming.
Yeah,
if Vasilevsky wins it, that's how you know they favor, because I don't think it might honestly, if I had to pick between the three, obviously I'm partial to Igor, but I think it should be Sorokin, even though they didn't make the playoffs. But Swayman just doesn't. I think he's a good goalie. He just doesn't really do it for me.
His team made the playoffs with him, so they may.
But
I don't know.
You also did say this is not a playoffs award, so
made the playoffs, not performed well in the playoffs. The big difference. Big difference. Don't put words in my mouth, dickhead.
No, but I think Sorokin, if you're just doing regular season alone, I think Sorokin is Sorokin was really much carrying that team amidst their downfall before they fired Patrick Waugh, which still kind of boggles my mind that they did that, but Anyway, all right, and then the last one, Ted Lindsay Award, which is the players voting on the MVP, right? Celebrini, Kucherov, McDavid. That one will probably end up being McDavid. If not, no, actually, I'll say it may either be McDavid or Celebrini. I think Celebrini ends up taking one of these awards.
I think it'll be Celebrini because he's the only reason why San Jose is relevant right now.
Absolute stud that kid is. Goodness gracious. I watched him get a hat trick in person. I thought that San Jose just, oh my gosh. I mean, yeah. All right. Next question in the producer jail praise account comment is, which Ranger do you see next vying for a major individual award? Oh, that's
Adam Fox will win another Norris in the next 2 years. He may not be a Ranger when he wins it, but he will win a Norris in the next 2 years. I'm just being an ass.
You are.
Listen, at least I call myself out on it. All right. There are people that say these things and like, oh yeah, I'm right. I know it. I'm gonna be hot takey, and no, I'm just being an asshole. But it'll be Fox.
Or you could think Connor McDavid's not worth everything that he's worth, but that's a different story.
I saw that, and I actually logged off of social media for the day when I saw that. Connor McDavid is overrated, not a playoff performer. The fuck out of here.
To Rick Nash, come on. I will every time that will come up in conversation, I will gladly roast the person who commented on that, because that is just, there's dumb and then there's just really
fucking dumb.
Yeah, I think Fox contends for Norris. I think Igor gets another Vezina at some point. And I think I think maybe I'm trying to see if I can find one out of the blue, but it just really depends if they're just exceptional or not. I think Will Cooley could be up for an award. I just don't know which one, But yeah, mostly I think it's going to be Igor, Vezina.
Ooh, I got one.
Fox, Norris. Yeah, go ahead.
For the Lady Bing, Matt Rempe.
I don't know about that, but
again, I'm just being an ass.
Yeah. Okay, and then this next one, the third part of this question is, he says, I won't pretend to know anything about prospects that I've never heard of until a few weeks ago, but all the scouting reports I see on Keaton Verhoff question his skating and decision making. Then they comment to say he'll be a perfect Ranger. It's more of a comment than a question, but
We've covered Verhov enough. I'm done covering this guy.
yeah. All right. Next question comes from Blue Shirts, and Blue Shirts asks, "Is it worth trading up when the top 2 picks are the least hyped since Kakko and Hughes? And could Carolina have the easiest path to a cup final in history?"
Is it worth trading up to the top 2, depending on what it costs? All about cost. If it's Schneider and the 5th for the 2nd, and the Rangers take Stenberg, I'm good with it. If it's more and they take Stenberg, depending on what the more is, I'm still fine with it. If they trade up to 2 and they take Verhov or they take Malhotra, I'm going to be upset. That is a bad use of assets.
Yeah, I think if they trade up to 2, it's because they're going to pick Stenberg. Unless Stenberg
Gotta be, right?
Unless Stenberg gets picked first overall, and then you basically get Kevin McKenna, which
that ain't happening.
That ain't happening. I think John Chayka is not that much of a snake oil salesman to know when to make the right pick. Yeah. I also think I just kind of bear with me here before we move on to the last question, or that second part of this question. I think Austin Matthews still gets dealt. That's just me. I think they have enough firepower, especially if they end up getting McKenna. I think they have enough firepower where they could still trade him for a haul. You know, I mean, you move his money, you probably retain some amount, and then you move him. And I still think he ends up getting traded. Whether or not that's to the Rangers remains to be seen. But I don't think because they got the number 1 overall pick means Austin Matthews is going to stay. I mean, it doesn't guarantee it until he's in uniform next season.
Hold on. I got to pull something up here that's going to make you throw shit soon. Let me just pull this up now.
As if I don't do that enough whenever I discuss things with you sometimes.
So, if you are the Florida Panthers,
do
you go in and offer Anton Lundell and the 9th overall pick for Austin Matthews?
Wow. Where did you pull that one from?
Because the only team I could think of it's in division, but at this point, if they're trading Austin Matthews, they know they're not competing for a while. So Anton Lundell is a 24-year-old center, cost control for the next 4 seasons of $5 million. He was a 12th overall pick. Very, very good center. You know, he doesn't really get top power play minutes there, and he's still a 20-ish goal, 45-point player. In top line minutes with William Nylander, he's going to double that. And with the cap going up to $104 million, there's cap space, plus they're shedding $5 million. So Austin Matthews, $13 million. 13 minus 5 is 8. 8 million. They can add $8 million easy.
Yeah, but you're adding back skill with McKenna, but then one of the things that I think Toronto has had an issue with is the fact that they're not very sound defensively, and I still think they're looking for that.
But Lundell is a two-way guy.
Well, that's what I'm saying though is that if you as much as you lose skill with Matthews down the middle, you regain that back with Lundell probably a little bit more, and then the skill kind of offsets with McKenna and Nylander.
And then you go and use the 9th pick, depending on who's available. Smits, Daxon Rudolph, Ryan Lynn. One of those guys will be there.
Yeah. Although
Florida wins the next 5 cups, and then Toronto wins the 5 cups after. And then the Rangers, we sit there with a thumb up our ass because we're not creative enough to do shit like this.
Well, thanks for the reminder. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And the second part of his question is, could Carolina have the easiest path to a cup final in history? I'll say this. If you've watched any of this Buffalo-Montreal series, they're not going to make it easy for them. Trust me. I was telling somebody earlier today that the only reason why Carolina is even in the spot that they're in is because the Rangers are not in the playoffs. Which, technically speaking, my comment isn't exactly too out of touch, because every time Carolina has faced the Rangers in the playoffs over the last couple of years, the Rangers have kind of made them pay, you know? So,
You're not wrong. You're not
no, I'm not.
wrong.
I'm not, because for some reason, it just always seems to me that Carolina just kind of knows how, the Rangers know how to play Carolina in the playoffs for some reason. It's actually also very similar to Washington and then also Pittsburgh. It's like whenever the Rangers play those teams, I don't want to say it's a guaranteed outcome, but it generally tends to go work in their favor pretty well. And Carolina in 22 and in 24, it was kind of the same thing. Everybody thought, well, yeah, Carolina is going to beat the Rangers, and then all the Rangers would do is just stomp all over them. And my favorite moment out of all of that is, well, if the Hurricanes can get a goal within the last 5 minutes, never mind. And look, I love Joe Morrow.
I will say one thing about what Carolina is doing is they're doing what they should be doing, which is, yeah, they won 8 in a row, but usually some of these games will be close. I don't think they trailed until game 4 against the Flyers at any point.
Yeah, no.
They are just trucking teams, and Ottawa was a good team.
Yeah. No,
so
absolutely.
yeah, the Flyers were. They lucked out that the Flyers and Penguins were the 2 other teams out of the Metro to win, to get into the playoffs. But Ottawa was good. Carolina is just a very good team, and they were due at some point to get past the second round, right?
Well, they've made the conference final over the years. They just never been able to seal the deal. But
I'm
yeah,
mostly
you're
going
right.
after the Rangers. We always eliminate them in the second round.
Right. Yeah. No, I know that. So, I think, with this long layoff that they have, which people don't think that would make a difference, but it actually kind of does. It just all depends on how they end up coming back to it. Because I think in 22, the Rangers had just finished beating Carolina in 7, and they played a really fresh Tampa Bay team who, for all things considered, if one puck just ends up bouncing the right way before a stupid Jacob Trouba penalty, the Rangers could have taken advantage of a team that was really slow, because the Rangers won the first 2 games of that conference final. And not only did they win, they dominated. And all Jacob Trouba had to do was not take a stupid penalty to lead them back into the game.
Not entirely. That's revisionist history.
No, but I
Yes,
will make
1,000% revisionist history, because John Cooper.
I maintained that thought back then. Yes, I did. I maintained that thought back then that, because then you could kind of say it was similar to what happened with the Panthers game when Zibanejad turned the puck over in overtime, because if they had been able to win that game in Florida, they essentially control the series 3-0, but I was in the camp that all they had to really do was not take that dumb penalty, and I think they would have been.
The Rangers were gassed, and John Cooper said it after game 2. Even though they lost game 2, this was an interview he did in the last year or 2. He said, even though we lost game 2, I saw that they were gassed and that the series was ours.
No, I remember that. I remember.
And I was watching, and yeah, the Rangers, they didn't dominate game 2. They had shifts where they dominated game 2, but they didn't dominate game 2.
Well, I thought they did, because I think I was at that game. Was I at game 2? Yeah, I was at game 2. They and I will say, looking back at it now, you could tell that there was a bit of fatigue factor, at least with game 2.
They were shot. They were done.
No, they were. But they did control a lot of what, seemed to be a lot of parts of the game, so to speak. I think even Gallant had tried Zibanejad and Panarin together at one point, which kind of somewhat worked out. But overall, at the end of the day, though, I think even if they were gassed, I still think Tampa Bay would have had a harder time if Jacob Trouba hadn't taken that penalty and Tampa Bay scored on that power play, which I think ultimately, when you have to fight back from that, kind of contributes to sort of the exhaustion part of that. I'll stand by that, what I said, because, it's the same thing like I said with the Panthers series, but Carolina, they're going to be in for a bit of a buzzsaw. And whether or not they're rested or not, or whether or not Montreal or Buffalo ends up going 7, because this is going to be a real chippy series. As we record this, it's 6-2. Montreal's just kind of working them right now. But I think whoever it's going to be, either Montreal or Carolina, I think Carolina's going to get their money's worth. So depending on what happens to Montreal, it probably could be an easy path to the final. But at the same time, Montreal has really looked like a team with a chip on their shoulder, especially with how Martin St. Louis coaches this team with, kind of having that strong influence over everybody. I think that's going to be it's going to be a tougher series than most people think. So anyway, and especially with Buffalo, with the way that they, their high-end skill and their speed could definitely be a problem for Carolina if they advance. But anyways, final question. This comes from Nikki70. And Nikki70 asks, Connor Sheary, of course, because it's not a Ranger podcast if we don't mention Connor Sheary 15 times. Connor Sheary, which of these 3 situations is presented to him? Sheary gets a player contract for 26-27. Sheary gets some organizational type job in the Rangers system. Sheary basically gets ignored and not offered anything. That's going to be number 1. Connor Sheary still wants to play hockey. He even said it himself at the end of the season. He's going to be here next year, I think, and he's going to fit in as a bottom 6 forward.
Yeah, he's gonna be with the Rangers next year. It's happening, guys. Just accept it, and just hope that they get rid of Taylor Radish. That's it.
Yeah,
Sheary has a spot on the team if Radish does not.
Yeah, I'm more than
But
happy.
I will say, if they keep Radish and re-sign Sheary, that's too many roster spots to veteran bottom 6 players with no real future.
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen there, but we'll see. So anyways, that wraps up the questions. Thank you again to everybody for sending your questions. Late or not, it's better late than never, like we said. So other than that, final thoughts, Dave. I think that segment really broke him. Any final thoughts as we do our best Jerry Springer impression there? Well, as Dave gets situated, I will give my final thoughts. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, this team ends up. I'm not going to say they're going to do the right thing, but I think that, I think that they're going to. They're going to make some waves, depending on not whether those waves end up doing really well or not. That remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, this is definitely going to be a team that's going to be a lot different next season. They're going to be younger, especially with the additions of Hamelash and Sikora on the bottom end, and then whomever they end up drafting, whomever they end up signing, or whomever they end up picking up in the offseason, I think will really determine how this team is going to end up being next season. All right. Well, I guess Dave doesn't really have much to remark at the end of the day, but I think StreamYard is being a little bit uncooperative with us. But thank you to Dave and the rest of the crew for, of course, allowing me to do this, and also to the rest of the writers who, really put their efforts in, and also to you, the listeners and the readers, and to those who consume our content. We thank you as always, and we appreciate you taking a look at what we do and how we do it. And, we love to hear from you guys as always. And, we really do appreciate and thank you for the time and effort that you put into checking out our stuff. So with that being said, that's going to be it for this week on Live for the Blue Seats. We'll probably be back to our regular schedule next week. But with that being said, we'll probably have, some more things to talk about, hopefully. And, we'll just take it from there. So with that being said, this is producer JL coming at you, and you guys have a good night. Let's go Rangers. And hey, somebody at MSG is actually playing pretty well. Let's root for them too.